I work for the SOC analyst, right? And today, I want to talk about one of the most important pieces of that conversation uh, in the agentic SOC world. And we in Microsoft call it the security data gravity. Right? And I'll walk through why this is a prerequisite for the agentic defense. Right? You may have heard and across the sessions today, right? This was one of the themes that we have been hearing. I wanted to drill into it a little bit. So now let's get going. Okay, let's talk about our landscape a little bit, right? So this is something that we already know, right? The market is in a genuine gold, rush, right, for AI security agents, right? If you look at it, 78% of security teams are deploying agents in the next 12 months, right? So they're not talking about evaluating, piloting. So they're talking about deploying in their enterprise environment, right? And this is a very remarkable number, right? And it means AI is not just a research item. Now it has become part of their budget line item. So that's how market are thinking. What that means is we are at a tipping point for AI, right? And how do we make it work? Right? The next part is for the by 2028, we are expecting 1.3 billion security agents to be there in our portfolio across the world. And if you look at every seam and sword, right, especially if we went to RSA, right, there were a few common themes that came, right? One was agentic SOC, right? The second one was about autonomous agents. Third one was fast response time. Fourth one was zero fatigue, right? So these were the common themes, right, across the industry and across the security providers. And this promise is actually very incredible, right? And interesting part is we are seeing it happen and it is in progress, right? But at the same time, we also see teams who are deploying agents, which is not yielding the positive results. What I mean by that is it's causing more confusion, right? They are getting FPs, false positives faster. They are making bad decisions faster, right? And that's kind of creating a loop that is causing more fatigue than what it's actually trying to solve. And that kind of brings us to the uncomfortable truth. So most of the deployments that we see are going to underperform or maybe even fail, right? And the reason is not what you think it is, right? The problem is not the AI, right? The problem is the data it's running on, right? That is going to be the key factor that's going to determine how good our AI investments and tools are going to be. So, and there are three, the weak link is the data foundation, right? And there are three specific failure models we can think of there, right? One is fragmented data, right? This is what Krishna alluded to in the morning as well. Say if you don't have a full visibility of the data and if your data is fragmented, your defense that you can get out of it is also going to be fragmented, right? And the reasoning as a result is not going to be effective. And the second one is context, right? This is quite underestimated in the AI world, right? Because a poor context leads to a poor AI judgment, right? So when I talk about context, what I mean is, do you have more signals about what happened, right? So user did some activity. Do we know, any characteristics about the user? Say the risky user, or the user login happened from a region he doesn't typically log in from, right? Those are critical signals that add value to the event and help you give better detections. Right? Third one is siloed data. So, a lot of our customers use a variety of security products, right? And they store data differently. They store data in different places, and you don't get a unified view of the entire estate with which you can make more holistic and accurate and faster security detections. Right. So, what's the solution to this one? Right. So, this is what we call as the security data gravity. So let me give you what I mean by security data gravity, and then we'll walk through the various pieces, what it means, right? When it gets into practice. Security data gravity is the tendency to attract more data, tools, workloads to the place where it's already concentrated, and thereby creating a self-reinforcing platform for defense, right? So kind of creating a flywheel, right, for your data and your agents and analytics on top of the data. Right? So this is a concept that's kind of borrowed from the world of cloud economics, where you say idea is that your data exists in one place and all the processing analytics, right, gravitates towards that data. So there are three pillars to think about, right? One is the breadth of data, right? This is about you get various signals. You get signals from endpoints, network, application logs, XDR, so many other tools and products, right? How can we have all the data in one place, right? So there's no picking and choosing of what data you want. Get all the data in one place, right? So you can add more value to what you want to do from the security context. And second one is context, right? This is what we talked about to say. If you know relationship histories, behavior patterns, more characteristics, right? A simple example is I can say a user shared a document externally. This is a typical event we see in our Microsoft, what we call as the M365 audit system, right? But Purview has a signal called the user is a risky user, right? SharePoint has a signal saying that this document contains sensitive document. It's a sensitive document, right? So if I add these things together, my event becomes that a sensitive document was shared by a risky user externally, right? So now this adds, maybe 1,000x more value to that event that a security persona can focus on compared to just getting an event saying that a user shared a file externally. So that's what I mean by context, right? And the context needs to be enriched and woven together as part of the data with which you can make effective decisions. And the third part is continuity, right? So how do you retain the data and make it queryable over time, right? Many systems process the data and drop it, but as one of the speakers earlier was talking about, right? Many of the attacks are slow and low, right? They be in the environment for multiple months, years even, study the environment, and then make their move on how to compromise, how to get the best out of the environment, right? And also you cannot establish some of these behavior patterns with a smaller time range, right? So if you look at a user behavior, you cannot form a user behavior over 48 hours of data. You'll need months of data to figure out and create a baseline for what a user behavior or pattern means, right? And here is where it gets a little bit interesting. And let me show you what an environment actually looks like today. Okay, so this is kind of the spider diagram from hell that I call it, right? I don't think I see the lines properly, right? So this is one of the Gartner uh, documents that I read from, right? There are 45 security tools in average that an enterprise uses. Right? This is a very high number, right? So think of it as there are multiple vendors. There are some vendors who are good at EDR, some vendors good at email security, some vendors good at cloud security, posture management, right? And these are different siloed products that exist in the market today. And each tool has its own view of what the profile looks like, what the threat looks like, etc. Right? And you have this analyst in the middle, right, who is trying to correlate all, figure out what's actually happening in the organization, right? So up to 40-50% of their time, the analyst uses is spent trying to correlate these events than taking meaningful actions, what they should be taking for their organization, right? So this is what leads to the delay, right, and the fatigue that we call that, if you get this day in and day out, it's very hard for them to manage. So the fundamental problem is you cannot train on AI agent which has incomplete siloed view of the data and expect it to behave like an expect, right? This is where we say the agent's output and response or the reasoning is also going to be fragmented. It depends on what data you're actually providing to the agent. Right? So let's talk a little bit more about this context. Right? So let's take a use case, right? And why context is so important, right? So I'm building an analogy between a new SOC analyst who joined the organization just a week back, and he's looking at his input to triage is a playbook, right? Compare it to a 10-year veteran in the industry, right? Who has a perfect recall of every incident that happened, what kind of issues that happened, why it happened, how did the attacker come in, what path they took, etc. Right? So there is a day and night difference between the outcome or output of the new SOC analyst versus the veteran, right? So our agent is one of these two things, right? So either our agent would behave like a new SOC analyst without context, or the agent can work like a veteran and provide insights rather than just providing some alerts that someone has to take a look at and try it, right? And this is where context becomes super critical, right? And there are few examples I called out here, right? Let's take like few critical examples, right? So one is about asset, right? We already spoke about a document, whether the document is sensitive or not, right? Similarly, when you talk about assets or devices, right? It's two different things. When I say a developer's laptop is showing some signs of compromise versus a domain controller is showing some signs of compromise, right? So the criticality of the domain controller being compromised is far more than an end user's laptop, right? Similarly, user behavior, right? So if a user logged in, right, at 2 a.m. and from a new country, is it a common pattern? Is that person someone who travels? That's why you see that, or this is a new login that you are seeing for the first time, which is not supposed to happen, right? Similarly, threat intelligence, right? You get these various signals uh, about IP reputation, domain reputation, etc. Right? Is this IP a good IP or is it a malicious known IP? Right? Those kind of signals are also important, and historical patterns. Right? Has this attack chain been seen before? Right? These are kind of table stakes from my point of view, and these have to be automatically available to the SOC, right? Without them having to uh, do the manual work to collect the information and then make the inference based on it, right? And this is what we want to make it happen, right, with the data foundation, right? And without this context, your AI is going to generate noise and not insights, right? That's going to be the fundamental difference, and the difference in that is going to be a solid data foundation. Okay, so I want to talk about what this high data gravity means, right? I think of it in terms of three pillars, right? One is ability to ingest and ingesting all data that you have in the system, right? It's not just ingesting. Are you able to normalize and get it in a consistent and a common schema? So tomorrow, if a new kind of data comes, I can use the same playbooks and run my detections on top of it, right? So I don't have to rebuild my detections for every scenario that comes in, right? So that is the first pillar about ingesting the data, having the data in the system in a common unified format. Right? The second one is enriching the data. Right? We spoke about the cases, about the document enrichment, the IP enrichment, user enrichment. Right? There are various signals that you can reference the data against. Right? And the entire SOC job is kind of finding the needle in the haystack. Right? You have these millions of activities that users, end users, information workers in your organization are doing. You need to find what is malicious among those, right? And this enrichment is going to provide a key signal on what is an event of interest, what is a alert of interest that they need to go against, instead of having to chase down every such activity that happened in their system. And the third one is retention of data, right? So we talked about the need for data being there for a longer period of time, right? And this is where and security is always you know risk versus reward, right? In an ideal world, I will store infinite amount of data in my hot store, so I can search for it anytime I want and do it, right? And in many cases I may never need that data, right? So there's always this business decision of, okay, what data I need, how long do I need, and always cost is a factor that comes, right? And this is one of the things that we are looking at to say, how can I control the cost for the user, right? So can I have different tiers of retention of data, right? And at the same time, I need to be able to give the capability for them to query. Otherwise, this whole thing becomes meaningless, right? At a reasonable latency, right? So if I'm able to query, I can reduce the cost down. At the same time, I can give all the capabilities that the customer is looking for with respect to the security needs. So the fundamental thing I want to, all of you take away from this is, it's not about what AI agent, right, or AI product that we are buying, right? It's not. It's we have to start with, okay, do I have the right data foundation on top of which the agent is built, which is going to provide the value that I'm looking for. So this is, I tried to create a mental model around it to say, how we should think of from the agentic security architecture, right? So I'm thinking of it like a pyramid, right? The bottom is the unified data, right? This is the one we are talking about to say we need the data foundation, which is unified, contextualized, has the right retention, right? And this is what is going to bring in the gravity that I'm looking for with respect to my security agents and tools, right? The layer two is the enriched context that we talked about. How can I enrich all the data, put it all together? The third one is now we are going into this world of, okay, what do we actually do with the data? Right? This is where we are talking about detections, analytics, ML-based models, rule-based, heuristic-based models, etc. How you can take these signals or take this context and take these events and convert them to signals, right? Then comes your AI agents, right? We use them for detection, triaging, prevention, remediation, etc. Right? And this is the foundation for your autonomous agent. How you can take some of these signals, right? Correlate and then create meaningful actions to the user, right? And the last part of this is always this uh, human judgment at the apex, right? So this is an irreplaceable aspect, right? So in the morning, Krishna was talking about, the agent came and deleted the VM, right? And you can lose data as a result of it, right? And in the enterprise world, the security is far more harder than the consumer world, right? So the previous stint I was in Microsoft was for uh, MDO, right? Spam filtering, right? So I could never say that I can be over, pivoting on one side because it's going to cause a problem, right? So if I over pivot and mark more of the mails as spam, it's a productivity issue, right? And that also has financial implications. At the same time, if I say I'm more relaxed about it and I let a spam or a malicious email come to your inbox, it has a different uh, implication in terms of security or malware, ransomware, any kind of things, right? So it's the same thing here. So in the enterprise world, in the security context, uh, there are some actions agents can do. There are some actions where a human has to intervene or at least approve, right, or validate to say is the agent doing the right thing, right? So this entire pyramid forms, the core of how we can operate with agents effectively, securely, accurately, and at a response that the customers and market is looking for. Right? And if you remove any layer from this, the whole stack will collapse, right? Because you may not get the data that you're looking for, you may not have the context, or you may not have the right kind of detections, or you may not have the right kind of agents, or worse, if you don't have the human oversight, you may take actions that lead you down the wrong path and cause you more harm than what it's already doing. So let's talk about case, right? So how a world without agents and a world with agents would look like, right? So on the left, right, we are talking about the scenario before, right? Before means maybe a week in the past, right? In the way things are moving, right? So SOC receives an alert, right? The next thing Stock is going to do is, so he has this slew of products. He's going to look across these products, pivot across this multiple tools that he has to collect information about what is going on, right? So if I saw the user in Entra, do I see similar activity in say Okta, right? Or if I see some activity in Endpoint, right? So if I'm using a different XDR product, I need to go into the product to see what kind of activity is happening. right? That's the whole context gathering correlation, right? At the best of times, right? Maybe you'll be able to do it in 30 minutes, right? Or it could depend based on, if it was in the middle of the night, the person has to wake up, log in, get approval, and then start looking at the data, right? And uh, then escalate to senior analysts, uh, do the response, etc. Right? And totally, you're looking at 4 to 6 hours, even in the best case scenario, right? Now you go the agent approach, right? And not just agent on built on top of a solid data foundation, right? So many of these actions that happen, you're able to do it instantaneously, right? Collecting the context, being able to enrich some of this data, right? And within minutes, you're able to finish the triaging of the data, and you send the data for analysts saying that, okay, this is all that you observed, this is the data I collected, this is the action that is prescribed, do you want to go and take the action, right? And it becomes a matter of someone approving it, and then yes, you are done and you are able to mitigate this, right? So this is the key insight, right? Speed without accuracy is going to be dangerous, right? AI will give you both speed and the accuracy that you're looking for, because it's reasoning with the full context, right? That is going to be the key there. If you miss any of these things, then we are going to, spiral down a dangerous path. Okay. So now I'm part of Microsoft, so I have to talk about Microsoft Sentinel, right? So, and this is not a product pitch, right? Instead, I want to share like three insights, right? What we have thought about and how we have built a system to illustrate, what data gravity looks at, from at enterprise scale, right? So the first one is petabyte size telemetry, right? But more important thing is the unification of accessing using one single construct, which is KQL, right? So that is our tool and that is our language with which we let all our SOC analysts come and access and play with our data, right? Do analysis, investigations across the entire data estate that we have. Right? The second one is how do we bring in more data? Right? So this is where we have this whole slew of connectors that we have built, where you can bring in all the data from the 1P services that the customer uses, or any 3P sources, right? So we have around 380 plus connectors, and recently with RSA, we released this agent which can build connectors, right? Because connector building itself used to be a month activity. Now I can build a connector in like 15 minutes and then go through the approval process and be done in 2 days. Right? So it's a big, humongous shift. And the third one is, I don't think we spoke about it much. This is the security copilot agents, right? So we are investing heavily in the infrastructure, right, for the data platform, as well as in our security copilot agents, right, that are grounded on the Sentinel data platform, which can, reason over this data better, right? And grounded here is a keyword, right? How we are using all the things that we talked about, the contextualization, history, and other things with which how we can do some of these things effectively. So we have built Sentinel, right, to be the gravity well for security data, right? So AI agents can have the foundation that they need, right? And this is a deliberate architectural choice if you think about it, right? And it reflects on the principle that regardless of which platform you are in, right, having this data gravity is the first capability that you need to have. AI capabilities, will follow it automatically. Okay. So now, the thing that we need to look at is your platform agent, ready for agentic defense, right? So that is the key thing, right? We talked about the pyramid, right? How, the base has to be strong, right? This is where we're talking about, okay, where does the data live? Is it all queryable from one place, right? So queryable from one place doesn't mean that it all has to be in one place. Like recently in RSA, again, we released a new feature called data federation, where a customer can have data in different sources, but we gave a unified view for them to access all the data. So you can still get the benefits as if the data is natively part of the lake, right? So that is what I mean by, okay, is your data all queryable from one place, right? The second one is, does your agent have all the context to make, right, at decision time? When there's a crux and there's an issue going on, Does it have all the signals to indicate that yes, this is a compromise, it has to be taken care of, or no, this is a benign event, right? And similarly, how far I can look at the data, right? Again, the three pillars of the data, right? The breadth of the data, the context of the data, and the longevity of the data that you can use, right? So quickly, let's recap, right? So I'm just going to repeat what I said, right? So data platform is a prerequisite, right? AI agents are essential for security. We spoke about how attackers are, using agents. So our defense has to be agentic in nature, right? And the data foundation is going to be the differentiator. Fragmented data will produce fragmented defense, no matter how good your AI model is, right? Because the AI model is not the problem. The data it's reasoning is the problem, right? And then context transforms AI norms into AI judgment, right? This is what we spoke about. If you don't know what it is, you cannot make a better decision out of the data. It's just a noise, and you are paying heavily for that noise, right? Rather than getting some useful insights that is more actionable for you from an organization point of view. And data gravity creates this flywheel, right, which will bring in more and more effectiveness over time, right? And for us, we have to start assessing the data that we have, consolidating the data, enriching the data, so you can have a platform, right? And you can have the agent that can reliably use the platform to do what we are asking it to do. With that, I'm done. I think I'm on time. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'll be outside if you have any, or I'll be inside if you have any questions for me. Definitely do reach out. My uh, LinkedIn profile is also there, so please feel free to add me, and I would love to have conversations with all of you. Thank you so much. Oh, sure. Yeah.
You have five layer from 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, and first layer is unified. My question is, if people put a lot of big data to, to go to your system, right? And how would you filter it? Because a lot of social media, things
Yeah, definitely.
which layer you can filter because unified data is things like you combine all the data, including those, they not good stuff, right?
Yeah.
You filter in the 01 or you go 03, detect and ready to filter.
Definitely. Thank you so much. This is a great question to say. I have huge amount of data. How am I filtering through to say what is of importance, right? And there are two aspects to this, if you will, right? What is of importance now, or what is of maybe of importance in the future, right? I'll tell you an example from our own Microsoft CSRB and the security incident of the past. We used to categorize a lot of our data as observability data, right? Diagnostic data, etc. Right? When it in the security context, it was a realization that we could use it to figure out what all activities the user did, right? So any data could be treated as security data, but at the same time, right, there's definitely a level of noise in the system and noise in the data, and the cost is also going to be a factor, right? So this is where we have a couple of things that we have done, right? One is, in our system we are able to tier the data to say, okay, let me put all my data in the cheapest tier, right? Which I may use it in the future, right? As some background job, some kind of crawler job kind of thing. Any interesting data, right? It could be that it's interesting to do the contextualization, or after contextualization, it becomes interesting, right? I will move it to a more, a warmer tier for querying, faster remediation, or giving it to the agents to process, right? So it's kind of a tiering method that we are looking at and that we do, how you can segregate the data. And we also give you capability to say, if you truly think this data is not ever of interest to you, you can filter out either before you get into a pipeline, or when you get into the pipeline, you can apply some rules to say, okay, this is not the data you're interested in, completely drop. So you don't incur the costs around processing, storing the data, etc. Okay, but what we have often found is it is better to store the data in the cheapest tier, because in case there is something that you want to look at the data and process, you do get it, right? And you pay very cheap. Like if you look at archive tier, it's like 1/10 of the cost of a cold tier or a warm tier, right? So you can still retain data for a considerable amount of time till you know that this data is truly not useful or interesting, and then you can drop it, right? So these are options that we can provide, how we can make it more useful and also the cheaper at the same time here, right? Because it's definitely going to be a cost versus risk decision. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Big round of applause for Suresh.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kannan Dhanashekhar, who is a partner with NGI.